see you as well. It's nice to be back in the seat, ready to talk some TTRPG.
Yes, indeed. And today we are talking about world building, about where to start. We've got a lot of cool ideas here before us in our notes, and we've kind of had a little preliminary discussion about it, and I think it's going to be some good stuff.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to start us off with a kind of philosophical idea, a bit of a chicken and egg situation, what starts first, the story idea or the world idea when you're coming to world building? It's a big one.
It's
a
good.
big one.
That is a goodie.
Do you want me to go first, or you?
Go on then. You go first.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll hold mine.
I'm going to go for the complete middle ground and say you can do both ways. They're both completely fine.
Oh, that's cheating. That's
It's
cheating.
But I will say this, though. If you have it, I think it's what you as a DM want more. Do you have a story you want to tell first and you want to find out afterwards the place you're going to tell it? Or do you have a place that you want to explore and then find the story from it? I've actually done both, and I've liked both a lot. I've done two sci-fi campaigns where I had quite a cool world idea, but I also had a story I really wanted to tell. I had a BBG before I made the world. I had this whole this core ideas that I wanted, and then I wanted to explore that in a place which I constructed around the story. Yeah. And that really worked for me. I found that really enjoyable. The campaign I'm planning for the next one is going to be more sort of Arthurian knights, Game of Thronesy sort of vibe. And that I was like, I want the world. That's what I want to see and experience. And then I'll find the core story elements after that. What's your approach to that?
So I found that really interesting when you said you started with your BBEG, because that is so how I start. Like, it's literally how I start. So I always have this idea of like what I want to see. Normally at the end, I know that's not normally how you do it, but I start with kind of the BBEG. And
Can you explain what BBEG is? BBEG is quickly, because I said it and forgot.
Oh my god, how do you even do it?
It's bad evil guy.
Oh, okay, there it is. The big bad evil guy.
Anyway, carry on.
I say it so much that I've forgotten what it
I
means.
I know.
So yeah, I start with my current campaign. I started with Galactic Empire vibes. Love 40k, and I wanted what would an evil emperor look like, or an evil Superman? Like how far can you push this BBG until it's just absolutely grotesquely overweighted? And then from that, though, I really do start with story. I think that's because when I play it is the most important thing to me as a DM, and I find my players react most to it. That may be just because of the players that I have in my group, I don't know, but I find they react most to it. So I then go, oh, so I have this Galactic Empire person. Why are they like they are? What could possibly happen? And like we said in the last episode, a lot of these ideas are very two-dimensional when they first happen. Oh, they were spurned by this person, or they were Kratosy, they got angry at the gods and they try to pull the gods out. Very two-dimensional until the BBG starts moving in the world. So then it comes onto the world as well. Once the world starts to flesh out, the story all starts to flesh out. But I like to start with that, the opposing force to what's going to be the players at the table, basically, is where I kind of start.
I like that too. It is really fun, and it means you have this in your idea. You're like, I know who the big antagonist is. I know at that moment. And actually, you start off with, I always start with like an image of what they look like. So my one for my most recent campaign, which I'll talk about this more in a minute, and we've mentioned it before. The BBG never came to pass. You guys stopped him rising. That's all I'll say about it. We talked about it in a previous episode. But I had this idea of him like rising up, haloed in light, this huge, powerful figure. And that, I was like, cool, that's really cosmic. It's really powerful. It's really like ancient. He's an ancient figure. Where does he come from? Why hasn't he been around? And then you go, okay, he's been our mind was he's been imprisoned by somebody. And then I was, okay, he's been imprisoned by the BBG of the previous campaign. And that was a whole cool thing. That was a whole cool element. And you can build on the BBEG so much and create the world around them. What factions were they part of? Are they new and like up and coming? Are they old, returning to power? Are they have they been in power and they've been corrupted? There's loads of ways you can spin it. About how your BBG is the kind of centerpiece of your world, really, and is kind of the big power head, I guess, of the power figure of the whole thing.
Yeah, I would agree. It's so important. And then I like to, once I've got that BBG set, and I've got, like I said, I like to start with some images as well. Normally of the ends, like, but you got to remember as well, when you think of these end images, they probably won't come to pass.
Yes.
They're more these creation and vibes that you're creating to kind of give you almost inspiration, right? I find like when you're thinking, you're in your mind palace, you're thinking of this stuff, you go, oh, that's really cool. What does that entail? And it just helps your mind open up to ideas, helps you explore ideas. You go, oh, that's really cool. Why is it cool? Knock on, knock on, knock on, knock on, knock on. And you start to filter out. And then you can go, okay, well, from this one BBG, I've got the invading galactic race of where they're from, why they haven't been there for so long, what makes them so cruel, why that fits into the world, why that fits into the players, and all that stuff, all that good stuff.
No, absolutely, and you can really flesh them out once they get into the world. And I remember you saying this before, and you mentioned it earlier about they start 2D until they get into the world, and you start to realize what would they say, and you have that first moment of like, oh, what would they say? What's their plan? I love doing that. I love in the background of my world going, what is their plan? And often the plan comes down to, for me, I think about, okay, what if their plan is they need to gather a selection of items which they're going to use for this grand ritual. You go, okay, where are they gathering the items? Which then makes you go, okay, well, there has to be there's this ancient museum from the god of knowledge, and it contains artifacts from a bygone age. And you go, okay, where is that museum then? Okay, it's in this fallen city. And then you start building a city. And okay, the city, what's the city like? Oh, it's in a desert. So maybe it's going to be a bit pyramid-y. Maybe that's the vibe. It's a bit Egyptian-y sort of thing.
Yeah.
Why it's a fallen empire? Do people still live there? And you just do that. We talked about yes and before the drama game of just continuing it, but with yourself of just going, this is an idea. Where am I going with this? Where are we placing it? What's there? Who's there? Why? And you can have so much fun doing that. So much fun.
I think that leads me on to a really important point. I know they were sticking with the BBG for a little bit, but I think it is really important to where you start because, like I said, it is the opposing force of your players. So it is the thing that they're batting off against. And that comes with giving the opposition, so the world, the BBG, or the BBG's cronies or generals, giving them all, if they're coming into the story, wants and needs. I think that's really good because, like you said there, when you were talking about your BBG, what do they need? Oh, they need this type of power, so they'll have to be over here doing this type of thing. So then, when your players are actually playing and they're just going through those first two-dimensional stuff, you can start breadcrumbing. Come back to that breadcrumbing idea because you're going, oh, the person's moving, they're doing this, and the ripples are showing through. Mine was the Galactic Emperor was pulling a planet across the solar system. That's why he wasn't there, because he was across.
It was crazy.
The galaxy, and he was pulling a planet across the galaxy, which he was on, and it looked like a little red star in the sky. And then the whole thing from first episode was there is a star in the sky, and that was the first breadcrumb. So you know that the BBG has wants and needs because he's coming towards you, but you don't know what they are, what they're doing. It's just that you can see the ripples feeling back to you, and it was always a conversation point because it was always there. So you're always talking and trying to figure it out until eventually.
And you were very, very good at not actually telling us. Yeah, holding it in. You never tell them. It was so good because I was just going, I want to, from literally episode 1, I was like, I want to know what that star is, why it's coming, who it's coming for, what's it doing, who's on it, what is it? It's a red star. It's a red star for now. And then slow people would mention it and go, oh, we worship the red star. And then people would, and actually, this is one thing actually about fleshing out your world that I've always found really enjoyable in your games. is you are good at giving contradictory myths about things.
Oh yeah.
About going, some guy going, oh, it's the judgment of the god of the king of the gods. Psych, it wasn't.
Yeah.
It's it's a blood moon that's
Red
forever been
herrings,
in the
man.
sky. Exactly, and you red herring
Yeah,
people.
you got red herrings.
But actually, they are red herrings plot wise. If you look at it from a plot perspective, but if you look at it from a world building perspective, it's fleshing your world out.
Yeah.
Who in the ancient world actually knew what the moon was?
Mhm.
There would be contradictory myths about it in every country. There'd be contradictory myths in the same town about what the moon is, what it's made of, who made it, who lives on the moon. And that fleshes it out so much with the world because it feels like real people are living in a real world, which that is just great world building.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Amazing. Right.
I think another thing, actually, we touched on BBEGs as kind of the top tier, as the big bad.
Yeah.
But there should always usually be a big good. And usually
Ah.
that can be represented with a pantheon of gods or a power structure you have in your campaign. And there's ways to approach this. And before this, I was kind of thinking about it, about how you could make a pantheon. And often people I find myself falling into the classic kind of Greco-Roman Norse style pantheon of individual gods representing individual things, similar to Hinduism as well. Hinduism has a similar pantheon, and that's a really awesome way of doing it. It means you have a bunch of cool NPCs you can be, and I love going into the mind of like, what would the god of war want from this interaction? How would they speak? How would they act? Why would they say that thing? What's their motivation? Or I've got one at the moment who has been a recurring NPC in my campaign, who's the god of journeys. And that's a weird one. People like, that's not the usual god that's a thing. Like, that's not usually a theme that a god would have, is like the god of journeys. You go, okay, but surely like Poseidon would be the god of ship-related journeys. And you'd be kind of like, what does that represent? But I always find it really interesting where there's a point where the party wanted to get somewhere quick, and one of them made a deal with the god of journeys. And what he did is he just put favorable winds the whole way.
I like
and it
that.
just meant you flew 20% quicker.
Yeah.
And it was just the god made it that much easier for you to get there. And that's really, I was like, oh, wow, that's a cool boon that a god would give. The god of war would never let you move 20% quicker. It would make your axe drip blood and, hack people, on fire and things like that. That's super fun, and that adds that world building flavor in with the pantheon, which I really enjoy that.
Gods are super interesting. In the last 3 campaigns, gods have actually featured very heavily in my campaigns, and there's so many ways you can do them. I think because also Forgotten Realms is like that as well. Forgotten Realms has multiple different gods, right? And all the different things, they have pantheons. And I think pantheons are super fun. I think they're a great way of having a multifaceted god, in the way that some gods are good, some gods are nasty, some gods are very neutral, some gods are chaotic, some are lawful. And there is an interesting way. A lot of my campaigns have featured actually gods as not mortal but tangible beings that can be interacted with, which I guess is kind of Roman Greek kind of style, where they are tangible and they can be talked with. But I've written down a couple of other different types that I've seen people do, which is you can do mortal gods. I messed around a little bit with the mortal gods in this campaign, which were kind of like fallen angel-esque style gods, which were mortal, but because they were mortal and they were gods, they were limited by the amount of power that they could have, because there's some type of, because I always was really interested with, if gods, so take monotheism to polytheism. The monotheism, the single god always seems omnipresent and omnipotent, but is caged by certain amount of laws so that they cannot interact with the world in its sense. And monotheism being lesser power gods in a way, but them actually intervening in humans' lives, not for a spiritual sense, but in a kind of mortal physical sense, as in Zeus having many demigods through mortal women and that kind of stuff.
That is really cool, and the monotheism versus like polytheism is a really interesting thing. One thing I'm just going to pick up on, which is a producer's note, is Forgotten Realms is the D&D, the classic D&D setting, basically, and the D&D campaign books are generally the Forgotten Realms. There's a bunch of like
There's another couple,
books and
isn't there? I
stuff.
think
Yeah, there's loads of
Maybe
settings as
Coast or
well.
something.
Yeah, there's a lot of settings and stuff. Just wanted to explain that. Producer,
Mhm.
you can tick that one off.
Ticket.
And you're right about that. And actually, interestingly, I've not seen a monotheism campaign.
Mm.
I don't think I've seen. I don't think I've seen one. And that sounds super cool.
I
Really
have some
cool.
ideas. I've been trying to mess around with it. I've been trying to. It's
Okay.
very difficult, I find, because if you're going to go for the monotheistic, so either how do you make an omnipresent, omnipotent God in world? Because obviously people in monotheism have been talking about this for years, like, oh, why doesn't God step in and do these things? And obviously religions have answers for that, but how do you answer that in a D&D campaign? You are then
It's
taking on
hard.
philosophical debates
Yeah, it's
into
big.
your D&D campaign that are really, really difficult to actually balance, because if they are omnipotent, then how am I going to explain this without removing them, as in like a Christendom way, removing God through a set of laws and that they cannot intervene? Then how do you do that otherwise? Which means you have to play a campaign where it's spiritual. The God is a spiritual essence instead of like a physical essence. And sometimes playing those mortal, tangible
really
gods are very fun. Very fun.
It is really fun, and I've actually got an interest. I'm flipping the pantheon of my next campaign. I'm going to tell you about it now because I think it's relevant to the conversation.
Go.
But animal gods. There's no human gods. They're all animals.
Interesting.
So they're all going to be different animals, and they're all going to be of different odd things. So it's not like there's a clear god of death. It's like a god of life and death, who's the wolf god, who's like the hunter. And I'm going to play with that, and it's going to be more the Princess Mononoke vibe.
Oh, I like that.
Where they're more mortal gods. They're actually on the mortal plane, running around doing stuff. That like there will be demigods of them who are a powerful wolf, that sort of thing. I think that's going to be quite fun and interesting because I've done the Greco-Roman pantheon a lot, and it's so satisfying. And I'm not saying don't do it, please do it. It's so fun. And like it just sits in that core kind of European literature thing where there's it is lovely, isn't it? It is fun.
Yeah, it's good.
But I want to flip it, and sometimes you want to change stuff up, and I'm going to try the animal pantheon, and I think that's going to be quite fun about how that would work. I'm interested.
I like that.
To see.
I also love the juxtaposition of that being with it being an Arthurian thing, so it's all knights and civilization, but the gods are actually natural and animal. I think that's a really nice thing to play.
That's going to be cool, right? That's what I mean. It's going to be that's going to be really cool.
You have knights and civilization and cities being built up, but actually in the wilds are where the gods are, which is an interesting thing to maybe look at modern day life as well.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. That's a good point, man. That's a good point. And yeah, there's loads of ways you can do it. Now, another way you've done it is the Titan style super pantheon, the pantheon above the gods. Can you talk to me about that? You called them the primordials in your campaign.
Yeah,
so
the
primordials. They're huge.
Yeah, it very much came from, once again, that Greek Titans-esque, where you had gods. When the world was first built, you had gods that weren't truly mortal in the way they think. They were still very chaos. I think a lot of Greek myth is it's order from chaos. The gods bring order from chaos, and I loved that order and chaos, that kind of Taoism vibe. And I wanted to mess with that and go, right, okay, so the world was made by these four ancient enemy creations, basically, and they created everything, and then they disappeared. So you have a pantheon now, but they're not the people that created the world. They're like caretakers of the world in a way. They've been given a portion of that power, so that they could take care of the world. And the reason I did that, if I'm going full transparency, is because I wanted to do a really epic campaign, and I wanted to bring you above the level of God Killer. Because everyone goes, "Oh, I'm level 20 and I'm a God Killer." And I go, "Well, I want to go one step above that. We're going to go Titan Killer.
We're going to kill the Titans.
The gods are going to be there, and they're going to be caretakers of the world, and they're going to be gods. But the enemy is the BBG is actually the son of these primordial titans, and to awaken them, this great sorcerer is going around and collecting shards of the bodies of the titans, and she's going to put them all together, and she's going to bring back the primordial destroyer. And just taking that one step above, I really love going anding and just going, okay, we're going to go big, but I want you to feel like we're just going so above the metric. We're just going to go way out into space, and we're just going to have all the sandbox toys, and we're just going to go wild.
Yeah,
have a crazy time.
And that is I'm so glad you said it like that, because it immediately throws us into our next idea and conversation topic, which is campaign theme and genre. Now, from what you were saying, what you wanted was, I want mega high giga fantasy where you're the Titan killers. And you will kill gods at level. I mean, we killed one of the mortal gods at level 5.
Yeah, you did.
Level 4, level 5, and we were going around going level 4s, and that was our whole meme, was the level 4 god killers. But campaign theme and genre is so central to how you approach building the world, developing the world. For my most recent ones, the idea has very much been, okay, it's going to be high sci-fi, high fantasy. There's going to be gods, there's going to be powerful entities. There is a super pantheon. It was similar to your campaigns in that. And the scale was big. There's mega powerful magic items, and we'll talk another time about crazy level magic items and things like that, which is super fun. But it's so enjoyable to start with that core concept of the idea of what you want. With this one, it's going to be more Arthurian, it's more Game of Thronesy. I'm thinking it's going to be like mid fantasy, just so people know what I mean by that. High fantasy is like clashing swords with gods and striking them down, very much like that. Middle, I'd say like low fantasy is like people have magic that you're not really in. If you were to interact with a god, it would just Zeus bolt you and you'd be dead straight away. So you're going to be fighting like a powerful baron, or maybe a demon like a lesser demon lord, something like that. Mid fantasy, which is what I'm going for, is kind of sits between the two. You're going to have interactions with the gods. There's going to be powerful entities you fight. It's unlikely they're going to be Titan level. Like Lord of the Rings, exactly. Like a Balrog is scary. Yeah, the Fellowship had to dip, and Gandalf had to solo the Balrog because they would have been toast.
The swords have no use here.
Yeah. Or frying pan, Samwise Gamgee. No use here. My
frying pan ain't happening.
Yeah, no.
Ain't going on.
No. So it's a really interesting one, and I know you're developing some ideas about future campaigns, about themes that you want. And like kind of how do you come up with your theme?
Yeah.
Where do you go with that? Question for you.
Yeah, theme definitely. I think DMs should be the bringer of the overall theme and genre of your campaign. You should sit down and you should go, right, what story, what thing am I trying to tell? And then you should bring it to your players. The way I did mine was very much, I've done high fantasy for a very, very long time now. I've done it for like 7 years. And I wanted to really go out and try something different. So I've gone sci-fi this time because it was a real want to step away from what I am comfortable with and what I know, and step out there and get something new. So very much my okay. So my genre was like, I wanted sci-fi, and then my theme was, I just want giant robots punching giant aliens. That's all I want. I watched Pacific Rim and I was like, damn,
it's good.
I want giant robots punching giant aliens. It's a way that I can bring kind of my epic fantasy Power Ranger vibe to the sci-fi of being like, and I wanted kind of, I don't mess around with a lot of low, gritty stuff. And I wanted to mess around with that too. So I've done a kind of pilot machine-esque vibe where I can keep the high fantasy I love, giant robots punching giant aliens. And then I'm going to have a gritty pilot. You're a pilot, but you're also a kind of political figure. And it's going to be, if someone shoots you, you're probably going to die. But it's all about political intrigue and manipulation and stuff. So I liked the kind of, I find that sometimes if you're playing one genre all the way through, people can get a bit tuned off to it, or maybe it's too much, especially if you're playing to the levels I am. It can be quite tiring. So I wanted a way to kind of dip back and forth, go, oh, we're low and it's scary, and then we're going to go punch some aliens. So that just fitted the kind of story I wanted to tell, and also the kind of dynamic I wanted to give my players. I've realized that in some campaigns that some things are happening. I go, what could I do to remedy that? What way could I? Because when things are so high fantasy, people aren't in danger as much because they're so powerful without bringing the stakes really high. So then you go, okay, well, they can be super cool and have super robots, but then they can be really vulnerable in these other situations.
Really love that idea. I really like it. I think I am very excited to play in it because vulnerability is such an important part of storytelling. I think crucially, like your heroes being vulnerable is so important. And also, I one thing I hate, and we've never had it, which I'm glad about.
It's a strong word.
About plot armor. We talked about mentioned this before. So plot armor is where you feel protected by the plot. You go, oh, I'm a major character in this plot. There's this prophecy about me. I will be fine. I'll survive this. If I get stabbed and I'm going down, actually, I will be fine because the DM will just save me. And actually, you want to have some. We talked about the term gambling with stories before. You want to be able to lose them. You want to be able to lose your stories, and that it sucks. It really sucks, but also it's so meaningful because then you go, my story means something because I can lose my story, and that's good.
That's a hard line to walk as well. I think there's definitely, I've been thinking about it quite a lot in recent elements. When you play such a high level campaign, things become so high level that things become very dangerous very fast. But you want to make sure, I think that's a conversation for another episode as well, how to treat character deaths, how to do vulnerability and risk, how to give, if you're going to have enough risk that someone dies, which you should, because you should be able to lose. Like, you have to have risk to have reward, and that is part of story. So you should be able to die, and you honestly, if you do something, say it might have to be a cost depending on what it is. But yeah, I think we could save that for a video, and we can have a chat about that.
Agreed, 100% agreed.
I've been around that. It's tough, it's hard, but also can be very beautiful, very powerful if done correctly. I think
it can. It really can. Now, we've touched on this a lot already. We've been mentioning kind of themes. So you were talking about Pacific Rim, about that was your genre. It was inspiration. Actually, one of the things I wanted to talk about was choosing and using your inspiration for things. So mine for my upcoming campaign is I'm a big Game of Thrones fan. I'm reading Fire and Blood at the moment. It's really good. You said to me in a message, making a history book sound great is like
interesting,
gripping and interesting is so awesome. And I love all of the knightly houses and the ancient seats, the ancestral homes, and then this house actually overthrew this one, so they have their ancestral home now, and that's just it's just such rich human storytelling. It's such rich human storytelling that doesn't need to involve gods, but you then you can have gods and things like that, which is exciting too, as we've discussed. But using inspiration is so important, and don't be ashamed of it. Don't be ashamed of it. Like you said it before, and it's been said. I can't remember whose quote. Every story's been told before.
Yes, that's a big writer. That's a big everyone in the writing thing. Everyone in the writing industry says that because they have there are archetypes in story that are always retold because they are inherent to the human condition.
Yeah,
and humans want. Like, you can go abstract and you can go outside, but it will always, even if you try to evade these archetypes, it will normally always come back to these archetypes because you write and you tell stories which are your experience, and the human experience is the human experience. Everyone is experiencing the human experience. I've got a really good quote that I'd love to say from the lead singer of Rush, Geddy Lee. What is originality? Originality is when you have so many influences you can't see them anymore. They've melded. And as your confidence rises in your craft, your personality steps in front of those influences, and that is what forms your voice.
Damn.
It's a good one.
That is a really good one. Good work on finding that, man. I like that.
Yeah, well, it's one I
Good.
keep quite close to my chest
Keep
anyway.
it. You like that one, yeah.
Because it's how it is. Like I said about the Red Star, that was from Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archive, where everybody had the death. If you haven't read the books, they have this death rattle in it, and it's little bits of prophecy or a little something is coming. Everyone that dies, a little bit of information comes out.
It is
So
great in the books,
and
as
you
well.
you have it throughout the whole story, and you're going, what is happening? This keeps happening. So then I was like, I need something that I can put at the start of the story that goes all the way through, that keeps people asking questions. And so that's what the Red Star came about. And like my first campaign was Lord of the Rings. It was Raymond E. Feist, the Darkness of Sephinon books. It was the Eddings books. It was all of these type of hero's journey books and epic fantasy books that made certain elements, certain characters, certain peoples, but then it evolves, and like Lee says, your personality ends up stepping in front of those inspirations, and then it actually becomes personal to you.
Yeah, you have to stamp your authority on it. And one way you can do that, honestly, is rename things in a way that you think's interesting. Also, and off of that name, you can derive things from it. I'm going to make up an example here. Let's say you want to have a super pantheon, they're that Titan-esque vibe, but you want to call them the prophesized, because they were prophesized by the first creator, which was their father, who they overthrew, and then they were overthrown by the gods. They were prophesized to be the end of the world. You can then have the disciples of the prophecy, who are a cult that still worship the fallen titans. And there's so many things you can thread through a word. And I personally have so much enjoyment from fiddling with the names of things, and then going, that is going to be called this, and this is going to be called that. And then you can fiddle through, and it makes your world feel really unique. It makes your world feel fleshed out. And it just gives you things to riff off. It gives you things to riff off, and that is what you want as a creator. I know we've been talking a lot about world building in terms of TTRPGs, but this is just general how to build a world advice. If you wanted to write a book, you wanted to write songs about a world, that's a great thing to do. I love songwriting too, so that's a fun thing to do. And fiddling with names can be really fun, actually.
I think as well, a good thing to do is two questions: a what if or a what happens next, which could be really good. Take yourself a favorite character, two favorite characters, and go, what if I blended them together? What if they were if I had this sorcerer that had the temperament of this other person in the book? Or what happens next? What if I had this sorcerer as the great sorcerer, but they lost it all, and now they're not the greatest sorcerer anymore? I think those are really good ways of taking an inspiration from someone else, and then you're right there.
Trying to get a pen, and I've done it very ineptly. Carry on, Amy. Sorry.
Taking an inspiration and then melding it into your own by just asking questions about that and manipulating it into your way. You definitely don't want to plagiarize, but I think there's definitely a lot of leniency given when it's your first time. Do mess around that. I took my favorite character, Makaros the Black, from the Feist books and put him into my first campaign. And he was an absolute hit because obviously he was very fleshed out already because he was a living and breathing person. But he evolved throughout the story by the characters interacting with that person. And then he actually didn't become Makaros of the Feist books. He became the Makaros of the campaign world because he wasn't living in the Feist books anymore. He was living in my campaign world. So he had changed and warped and become something that was actually unique except for his name. And I don't think you should be afraid of doing that. I think you should play.
I absolutely agree. And if what gets you as a DM going is that name and that idea of a black-robed wizard who travels around, then do it, because they can be whoever you want. They could act completely differently, like as you say, and that it's just there's so much you can do. but take your inspirations, enjoy the inspirations. If what you love is that there's the rule of 2 of the Sith,
Oh, it's a good one.
and there's always a master and apprentice, and that rather than Darth, you want to call them Carth something. That's fine. Just love that idea, because it might turn out that you don't have to have a Darth Sidious and a Darth Vader. It doesn't have to be like that. You can change them completely differently. You could have like a ruined, damaged master who is the Vader in physicality, but the master. And then you could have a wizened old apprentice. That would be a weird, that would be a cool dynamic flip.
Yeah.
And that would be really fun to experiment about, okay, what's going to happen with that? If you love something in a story, why not put it in your story and blend it to yourself? Because it will change. It just will. Like you say, Macross the Black went from a character from a book you read, which you loved, to like, he was my favorite NPC of campaign 1.
Yeah.
Full stop.
Yeah,
I absolutely loved him. And I'd never read those books. So I've had no interaction with those books, which I will at some point, by the way. But I've had no interaction with those books. I've had interactions with him.
Yeah.
And I loved him
not
so much. No, he's not the same. And I loved him so
He's not the
much.
same.
I was then a wizard character that turned out to be the Guardian, which was the same thing he was. And then I got to live out my Macross fantasy as a new character. Oh, and that was just, it was beautiful. That was so fun.
Yeah, it was good. I love, and that is something everyone should experience once in their DM life, is the knock-on campaigns. I'm so blessed and honored that I've had such a great team to do this kind of knock-on world.
When you say knock-on, what do you mean by that?
So we had the first campaign in the same world that we've had the second campaign and the third campaign, where we, as a group of friends, sat around the table and we've had new people come in, old people leave. Sam is obviously the diehard Donnie from day one.
I'm the diehard, yeah.
He's the only living member of campaign 1 still in the game.
I'm still about.
He's around.
Still about.
But that compiling of lore and the compiling of the world and its civilizations, and each campaign is like so many hundreds of years in the future, so everything's kind of changed, but some civilizations still have a core tradition that's lasted, and I think that's so much fun. And if you do get a chance to do it, even if you're just a DM with different groups, it's such a great way of you knowing all the damn lore that's in your world, because you're just like, I know everything.
I really have enjoyed that, the continuous lore. And as a lore, I'm a lore monkey. I love collecting the lore magpie we said last time. I love collecting the pieces and taking it back to my lore nest and dropping it off and rearranging them into little, and then you find the puzzle in it. And having played all 3 campaigns, that's been so fun to go, oh my god, that theme from campaign 1, which was now 7 years ago, which is wild in itself, is actually exists in the now campaign. And that's mad. And we can develop that and explore it. And sometimes what I've really enjoyed as well is when an event happens in the first campaign, but then you see the event through a different lens, the second in future campaigns. That is super exciting. And you can flip the same idea in the same thing. And I think it really comes down to enjoying the process. Enjoy it yourself as a world builder. One thing I write down here, it's I personally love, I know you do it, is write stories you want to tell, even if you never get there in the campaign. And sometimes you don't, and actually a lot of times you don't. It just never happens like that. You give them the plot point, you give them the crazy mosaic of this crazy thing, and as bog standard, your team decide that's the moment to start divvying out potions, and they completely miss it, and it's gone. And you just have to go, okay, well, I know that story's cool. I know that story's fun. They didn't land it. And sometimes next campaign, it does come up. So someone starts pulling the thread and you go, oh, wow, it exists. Actually, I can find that Word document. Oh, and then you've got it. And that's lovely.
It's good. I think for that as well, that comes with the breadcrumbing as well. It knocks onto that idea of you can just scatter things around, people will ignore them, but they're still happening. They're still going on. The things are still happening, and eventually you'll. I like to, when I'm breadcrumbing, say the mosaic idea.
Yes.
One thing that's really poignant. So I did it recently with a kind of primordial gold called Cosmic. And every time you entered the temple and you saw a man made of a constellation, this image of a constellation kept this person out of a constellation kept showing up. And eventually you met them and they were made of a constellation. And you would go, oh, wow, we've actually seen you in every ancient temple that we've been in for the last, I don't know how many times, or this many. Every time we touch on a temple that has these ideas, we've seen this figure and now we're stood before that figure. It gives that figure some gravitas, some poignancy.
Yeah, and just add that gravitas is huge. Those power structures. There's so much to think about. And also give your players freedom to create stories themselves and riff off of them. They will come up with some amazing ideas you would never have dreamed of. And actually sometimes they're cooler than your idea. And actually what is fun sometimes is somebody starts saying, so what if it was like this in a moment of RP, and you go, oh, that's cooler than the way it actually is. Okay, that's the way it is now. Okay, and then you just change it, and then you go, oh, well done, you predicted it, well done. They feel great because they've worked it out, and really all they worked out was their own idea, and you stole it.
Yeah,
There's levels to this game, homie.
There's levels. You got to play the game. You got to do it. I think so too. And like you said, it just gives them the reward. It gives them a reward. And sometimes people, that's the thing. It's DMs can get locked into the thing that I have to create everything. Everything has to come from me. There can be an element of pride to that, but there can also be an element of control. Like giving the reins away to other people can be really scary because they might break the beautiful thing that you're trying to create. But that comes with trust, and it comes with you're our DM, and you can still say no. It comes with trusting the players at the table and giving them free rein. And if you trust them and you instill that trust in them, they will not. I don't think they'll disappoint you. No, they might, but no. Get them away from your table.
You do this with me a lot. You do this with me where you're very, you know, I'm not going to
relationship.
Yeah, we've had an established relationship across 3 campaigns. We're best friends. We know, I'm not going to do you dirty, and you're not going to do me dirty. And I can do some little creative bits, and you can do the same. And lovely. It works. It really, really works. Now, I think that is all we've got time for. So I think we're just going to summarize events of today. Now, we went through world building. Our key topics were where to start, story idea, world idea, campaign themes and genre. Also, power structures we talked about a lot. Your big, bad, evil guy, your pantheons, styles of pantheon, and using inspiration. Use your inspiration. If you like Greco-Roman stuff, use Greco-Roman stuff. If you like the Hindu gods, use that. If what you love is Game of Thrones, do that. And enjoy it. Enjoy every second. Enjoy every second. Any point you want to add there on the end, my friend?
No, not at all. I would love to, in a future episode, talk about maybe civilization power structures.
I'd love to do that too.
God, I reckon that would be a juicy topic.
That would be a very juicy topic. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I had lots of fun.
Thank you very much for joining us, listener. Thank you very much for joining me, Connor. Thank you. If you enjoyed this today, join us next week where we will build a world from scratch.